We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Daled Amud Aleph in Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 34a. On the previous Amud, the Gemara brought a brisa that dealt with a base shar, a gatehouse, that opened up to a garden and to a kitonis, which is a small room or a small house. The Chacham are lenient in this case and say a mezuzah is not required, and Rabbi Yossi is strict and says that a mezuzah is required. And on the previous Amud, Rav and Shmuel said that Rabbi Yossi is strict in all scenarios, and Rab and Rav Yosef say that he is only strict in a situation of migino lebayis, and Rab and Rav Yosef say that he is only strict in a situation of migino lebayis, from the garden to the house. And Rashi on the previous Amud had two explanations of what migino lebayis means. One explanation is that we're talking about the door that actually goes from the base shar, from the gatehouse, to the bayis, to that small house. That door requires a mezuzah, but not the other door. The other explanation of Rashi is that migino lebayis means if the hinges indicate, if they are on the side towards the bayis, so then the door requires a mezuzah. So then the entrance requires a mezuzah. And the Gemara continues and explains, according to Rabbah and Rav Yosef, that the Chacham are lenient even in the situation of migino lebayis, because everything is adaita degina hu david, that's all really made with the intention of the garden. And the Gemara continues, Abaye v'Rava avdi karabba v'Rav Yosef. Abaye and Rava, they went like Rabbah and Rav Yosef, that Rabbi Yossi is only strict in a situation of migino lebayis. V'Ravashi avid karavu Shmuel, and Ravashi followed Rav and Shmuel, that Rabbi Yossi is strict everywhere. L'chumra, and we are strict to follow Rabbi Yossi's opinion. V'hilchasa, and that is the halacha, karavu Shmuel l'chumra, that we follow Rav and Shmuel, and we are machmer, we are strict. And Rashi explains, v'hilchasa karavu Shmuel l'chumra umatzrich mezuzah letarvayu, a mezuzah is required for both of them. Disfira lon k'Rabbi Yossi, because again, we hold like Rabbi Yossi. And the Gemara continues, Itmar, it was stated, Lul pasuach min habayis la'aliyah, if there's an opening that opens from the lower floor to the aliyah, to the attic. Amar Rav Huna says, Im yesh lo pesach echad, if there's one entrance, whether at the top or the bottom, so chay b'mezuzah achas, then he's obligated in one mezuzah. Im yesh lo beis psachin, if there are two entrances, chayev b'shtei mezuzah, so then there's an obligation of two mezuzahs. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Papa says, Shmami nami de Rav Huna, we see from Rav Huna, Hai in Jerona, if there is a room, the Islay Arba Bave, that it has four entrances, Chayev ba'arba mezuzos, it's going to be Chayev in four mezuzos. And the Gemara says, Pshita, isn't that obvious? And the Gemara says, Lo, no, tzricha, it's necessary, it's not obvious, because Afal Gav de Rogel Bechad, even though he's accustomed to using just one of the entrances, but all four of the entrances will require mezuzah. And Rashi explains, Lul ha'pasuach min habayis la'aliyah, again, there's an opening that goes from the lower floor to the upper floor. Zehu darkan, this was a normal custom, Aruba be'emso ha'aliyah, they would have this opening in the middle of the upper floor, of the ceiling of the lower floor. Va'olin lo min habayis b'malos, and then one would ascend using stairs from the lower floor and go up to the upper floor. V'yosin dalin mechitzos saviv hamaylos, and they made four walls around the steps, lamat at the bottom, kadesh lo yerid adam minho aliyah labayis, that way somebody shouldn't come down from the upper floor to the lower floor, ki im b'reshus bala, unless he had the reshus, the permission of the owner of the lower floor. V'yosin pesach b'mechitzos, and there would be a door in that wall. V'chein osin b'nei aliyah, and the same thing would be done by those who resided on the upper floor. Dalin mechitzos saviv aruba, they would construct four walls around the opening lamala above, uvohen pesach, and there was a door over there as well. Im yeshlo beis psachim, so again, if there are two doors, echad bebayis ve'echad ba'aliyah, one in the lower floor and one in the upper floor, kedepei Rashi, as I explained. And Rashi continues, afagav de rogel bechad, the chiddush is, in the case of the Enjrona, that has four entrances, it's chayiv in four mezuzahs, even though one is accustomed to only using one of the entrances. Afagav de rogel bechad minai hutzvei, even though one is used more. Dehad da amrun le'el, that which we said earlier, halach achar harogel, that we do follow the entrance that's used more often. Here it seems it doesn't matter. They're all chayiv in mezuzah. Hani mili kagon trei bave v'rogel bechad. That's talking about if there are two entrances and he uses one of the two. B'teila idach lagabe. So then the second one is considered nullified to the first one. Avol telasa lagabe chad lo batli. But three entrances to one entrance, that's not going to be nullified. And Rashi continues, Lishna achrina, another answer to this question, again from the Gemara earlier, mitshuvas hagaonim, this comes from the Tshuvas hagaonim, halach achar harogel, you follow the entrance that people are accustomed to using, shayarogel shebnei adam regilim lotzeis v'lovo bo, so there again we follow the entrance that people use, v'lemu'ute pischa de Rebbe, that would exclude a situation of an entrance that's just for Rebbe, as we talked about earlier, she'eno asoi ela lo levado, let's say it was an entrance just made for him, so that would be excluded from mezuzah. Uleisuye pischa de Rav Huna, and that would include the entrance of Rav Huna, shahayarogel regel af lachem, that was used by others as well, so it's chayiv in a mezuzah. Aval beis psachim o gimel lecheder echad, but if you have two entrances or three entrances to one room, v'kula nasu lebias kol bnei habayis, and all the entrances are really for everyone to use. Shayu merubin, there's a lot of people. V'tashmish echad b'cheder tadir, people are always using the room. V'hutzrechu lo psachim harbe, and it's necessary to have a lot of entrances. So then kulan chayavin b'mezuzah, they're all chayiv in mezuzah. V'afal pisha nismai tashmish ve'enon tzrichen achshav lekulan elul echad mehen, even if now there's less use of the room and you don't really need all the entrances, you only need one, but still, again, they're all obligated in mezuzah. And the Gemara continues, Amar Ameimar says, Hai pischa da'karn, if there's an entrance at the corner where two walls would have met, so chayiv in mezuzah, that entrance is chayiv in mezuzah. Amar le Rav Ashi li Ameimar, Rav Ashi said to Ameimar, v'hol lesle petzimin, but there's no doorposts, how can it be chayiv in mezuzah? Amar le said to him, Adi petzimi, these are the doorposts, meaning the ends of each wall that essentially comprise the entranceway, so those are considered to be the doorposts, and that's why it's chayiv in mezuzah. And Rashi explains, Da'karna b'keren zavis shalbayis, again, talking about an entrance at the corner of a house. Va'ein la petzimin, the Gemara asks, but there's no doorpost. Bezuzos, there's no doorpost. Ala Rosh HaKsalim, it's just the ends of the walls. And the response is, Ade harei kolomar elu Rosh HaKsalim, the ends of these walls, hein petzimin, those are considered the doorposts. And the Gemara continues, Rav Papa iklo levei Mar Shmuel, Rav Papa went to the house of Mar Shmuel, chazahu pischa de lo havele ela patzim echad, he saw a certain entrance that only had one doorpost, mismall, and it was on the left. V'yavidale mezuzah, and he put a mezuzah over there. Amar lei said to him, Keman, who is this following? Ki Rabbi Meir, it's following Rabbi Meir. We'll see Rabbi Meir in a moment that even one doorpost is chayiv in mezuzah. Amor de Amar Rabbi Meir miyamin. We can say that Rabbi Meir said his halacha if that doorpost is on the right side. Mismol miyamar, did he say this halacha if that one doorpost is on the left side? And the Gemara continues, Maihi, what is this reference here to Rabbi Meir? The Gemara says, the Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa, Mesechet says your house, Bioscha min hayomin, it says you enter from the right. Ata omer min hayomin oeno elo mismol, you're saying it's from the right, maybe it's just from the left. Talmud lomar Beisecha, again the pasuk says your house. And the Gemara says, my Talmuda, what is being derived? How are we deriving this over here? Amar Rabba says, derech bioscha, because the way a person enters is min hayamin, it's considered to be from the right. T'chiyakar ineshkare diyamino akar, when a person lifts his legs, when he begins to start walking, he starts with the right. And the Gemara continues, Rav Shmuel bar Acha kame de Rav Papa, mishmei de Rava bar Ula amar mehacha, Rav Shmuel bar Acha in front of Rav Papa, in the name of Rava bar Ula said from here, from the following pasuk, this is a pasuk in Sefer Melachim, Vayikach Yehoyada HaKohen aron echad, Yehoyada HaKohen took one chest, Vayikov chor bedalto, he put a hole in its lid, Vayitin oso etzel hamizbeach miyamin, and he put it by the mizbeach on the right, Bevo ish beis Hashem, v'nosnu shama HaKohanim, shomrei hasaf, es kol HaKesef, hamuva beis Hashem, when one would enter, they would put the kesef in there, and so you see it's on the right side that the person is entering. And the Gemara continues, so from there we see the concept of the right side. My Rabbi Meir, now where do we find this Rabbi Meir opinion, that again one doorpost is chayiv in mezuzah? The Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa, Bayis she'ein lo ela patzim echad, let's say there's a house, just has one doorpost. Rabbi Meir mechayiv b'mezuzah. Rabbi Meir says it's chayiv in mezuzah. The Chachamim potrin, and the Chachamim say it's potter, it's exempt from mezuzah. The Gemara says, my time of the Rabbanon, what's the reason of the Rabbanon? Because mizuzos ksiv, it says mizuzos, that implies plural, there has to be two. And the Gemara says, my time of Rabbi Meir, so what's the reason of Rabbi Meir? Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa, mizuzos, it says mizuzos, shomeya ani miut mizuzos shtayim. Now I would understand the minimum amount of mizuzos is two. Kishu omer mizuzos beparsha shniya, when it says in the second parsha, again it says mizuzos, shein Talmud lomar, doesn't have to say it again, have a riboy achar riboy, that's an inclusion following an inclusion, ve'in riboy achar riboy elalamait, an inclusion following an inclusion, meaning a double inclusion, is considered to be an exclusion. Miato hakosev lemezuzah achas, therefore the pasuk is excluding and saying even one doorpost is obligated. Divrei Rabbi Yishmael, these are the words of Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Kiva says, Eino tzarich, one doesn't need this derivation to prove this idea, because we can learn it from the following. Kishu Omer, when it says in the pasuk, Al hamashkof v'al shtei hamezuzos, it says on the two mezuzos, she'ein Talmud lomar shtei, the pasuk doesn't need to say two, because mezuzos is plural, it automatically grammatically means two. So matam velomar shtei, why does it say shtei? Ze bona av, this builds a general rule. Kol makom shenemar mezuzos, anytime it says mezuzos, eino el achas, it always means one, ad sheyifred loch ha'kos of shtayim, unless the pasuk specifies two. And Rashi explains, patzim echad, it just had one doorpost, shahaya ha'pesach eitzel hazavis. The case over here is that the entrance, the doorway, is by the corner. V'tzir ha'pesach hu hazavis, and so therefore, the zavis, the corner, makes up the other end of the door. Vein etzlo klum, there's no doorpost. Vein lo patzim elasav shaso gerbo, there you don't have a doorpost. And Rashi continues, Rabbi Meir, like Rabbi Meir, Mefarish Lakamon, this will be explained as the Gemara goes on. The Mechayev mezuzah lebayis she'en lo ela patzim echad. He says a mezuzah, one is chayev in a mezuzah for a house that just has one doorpost. And the Gemara first asks, Ma'hi menolan d'miyamin, from where do we know this idea of the right? That's first what the Gemara brought before it brought Rabbi Meir. Biyoscha min hayamin, derech yamin labiyah, a person enters on the right. Derech biyoscha leviyah v'lo liyitziyah, it goes by the entering and not by the exiting. Miyamin bevo ish beis Hashem, kishahaya adam nichnas lepesach azara mizrachi, when a person enters the azara from the east side, v'holech l'mayrav, and he's walking towards the west, havale oso aron miyamin, so the aron would be, that chest was going to be to his right. Shahaya noson eitzel kir tzvoni shal mizbeach miyamin, it was put by the northern wall of the mizbeach, so that would be on his right side. Bevo eitzel ha-mizbeach alma derech yamin havebi. You see that on the right side, that's considered the entrance. V'chol davar ha-noson derech biyah tzarech litano miyamin, if something is being placed according to the way people are entering, that would be on the right side. Again, the pasuk excludes by mezuzah even one doorpost is going to be chayiv. She'ein tam lomar shtei. It doesn't need to say the word shtei too. To miyut mezuzah shtayim, because mezuzah is plural, it means two anyhow. And so again, that builds a general rule that if it says shtei, then it means two mezuzos. Otherwise, it is one. And the Gemara continues. Tanu Rabbanan, the sages taught in a brayso uchsavtam. It says in the pasuk uchsavtam. Yachol yichtavena al ha'avanim. One might think that the pasuk means, since it says uchsavtam al mezuzos beisecho v'sharecha, that one should write it on the actual stones of the doorpost. Nemar kan ksiva, it says over here the word ksiva. V'nemar lahalam ksiva, and it says further on the word ksiva. Rashi says we're referring to v'chasav la sefer, talking about writing a gerisha. Malahalan ala sefer, just like over there it's on parchment. Afkan ala sefer, so too over here it's on parchment. But the Brisa continues, O klach derech zu, perhaps we should go in the following direction. Nemar kan ksiva, it says over here ksiva, v'nemar lahalon ksiva, and it says further on ksiva. Ma lahalon al ha'avonim, just like over there, it's on stones. That's when they were entering into Eretz Yisrael. They wrote the Torah upon the stones. Afkan al ha'avonim, so too over here by mezuzah, maybe it's on the stones. Nira lemidoma, so we have to see which one is it more comparable to. Don in ksiva hanoheges ledoros, we learn a writing that's going to be for all generations, like mezuzah, miksiva hanoheges ledoros, from another writing that's going to be for all generations, like by gerisha. V'yein donim ksiva hanoheges ledoros, we don't learn a writing that's going to be for all generations, miksiva she'ein hanoheges ledoros, from a writing that's not going to be for all generations. Uchemoshe nemar lahalan, it's also like it says further on, the pasuk says in Sefer Yirmiyahu, vayomer lehem Baruch, and Baruch said to them, mipiv yikro elai es hadvarim ha'ela, he dictated these words to me, va'ani kosev ala sefer b'diyo, and I wrote it on the sefer b'diyo in ink. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Ravacha brei Rava Ravashi, Ravacha the son of Rava said to Ravashi, Rachmono Amar al mezuzos, the pasuk says al mezuzos, it sounds like it is written on the stones of the doorpost. Viata amrit neilef ksiva ksiva, and you're saying that you should derive with a gzeira shava ksiva ksiva against the simple meaning of the pasuk. And to that the Gemara says, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, Uchsavtam, write, and what it means is, Ksiva Tama, first do an entire writing, V'hadar al ha-mezuzos, and then you place it on the doorpost, and so therefore it's clear, it's written on a sefer, on parchment, and then it's placed on the doorpost. And the Gemara continues and asks, so me'achar dechsiv uchsavtam, but since it says uchsavtam, which teaches us first a ksiva tama, and then v'hadar al ha-mezuzos, then it's placed on the doorpost, so hai gzeira shava lamali, so what do we need the gzeira shava for, that we brought earlier? Again, we brought a gzeira shava of ksiva, why do we need that? And the Gemara says, ilav gzeira shava, if not for the gzeira shava, hava amina lichtava avna v'likva asefa, one might think that one should write it first on stone and then affix the stone to the doorpost, not necessarily parchment. And so kamash malon, that's what the gzeira shava of ksiva teaches, that it has to be on parchment. And Rashi explains, Lahalon Ksiva, it says further on Ksiva, V'chosav la Sefer, again by Gerisha, it says V'chosav la Sefer Krisos. Ulahalon Ksiva, it also says Ksiva over there, that's talking about V'chosafto al ha'avonim, write it on stones, the words of the Torah, again by the entry into Eretz Yisrael. Sefer Krisos noeg ledoro, Sefer Krisos a Gerisha, that goes for all generations. Ksivas avonim, the writing on the stones, Horas Shahaisa, that was just at that time of entering Eretz Yisrael. And Rashi continues, Shenemar Lahalon, and then the Braisa brought this pasuk in Sefer Yirmiyahu, Kilomar, and that means to say, V'tzarech lichtov b'diyo. The Braisa is trying to say there's also a requirement to write it with ink. Bein b'mezuzos, bein beget, that's true whether by mezuzah or by gerisha. Kemo shenemar mipiv yikra elai, Kilomar mehaikra nafka, to Sefer b'diyo. But the point is that from this pasuk we see that a Sefer is written with diyo, with ink. And Rashi continues, Rachmana Amar al Mezuzos, the pasuk says al Mezuzos, the mashma kosam al asaf mamish. That sounds like it's saying to write it on the doorpost itself. V'lo bigeris, not to write it on parchment. And so then the Gemara brought ksiva tama. First there has to be a ksiva tama. Vein ksiva tama al ha'etzim ve'avonim el al sefer. It's only going to be ksiva tama if it's on the sefer, on the parchment, not on etzim and avonim, not on wooden stones. V'hadar sima b'mezuzos, and then place it on the doorpost. Gzeira shava ksiva. Then the Gemara asks, so what's the purpose of the Gzeira Shava of Ksiva? And to that the Gemara said, one might have thought, Lichtava Avonim, write it on stones, Yechika, Besakin al Avonim, use a knife and carve it into stone to have a Ksiva Tama. Now it'll be a Ksiva Tama first. V'hadr Likvo le'evan aseifa b'tzuras ha'pesach, and then affix the stone to the doorpost. V'ikayim Ksiva Tama, v'hadr al ha'mezuzos, and through that will fulfill the pasuk of Ksiva Tama, and then al ha'mezuzos. And again, therefore, that's why we need the Gzeira Shava to say that it is written on parchment. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Arba parshios shebetfilin ma'akvos zuesu. The 4 parshios in tefillin are all required for one another. Ve'afilu ksav echad ma'akvon. Even one letter can hold back the mitzvah from being fulfilled if one letter is missing. And the Gemara says, Pshita, isn't that obvious? The Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, Lo nitzrucha ela lekotzo shel yud. It's just needed for the thorn of the yud. Even that small part of the yud can hold back the fulfillment of the mitzvah. The Gemara says, V'hanami pshita, but isn't that also obvious? And the Gemara says, Lo, no, nitzrucha, it's necessary, ela le'idach de Rav Yehuda, for the other teaching of Rav Yehuda. To Yamar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, because Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, Kol oz she'ein gavil mukaf lo me'arba ruchoseh, any letter, if the parchment is not surrounding it on all 4 sides, if it's touching any letter that's next to it in any way, psula, then it is disqualified, and that's what the Mishnah is teaching, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Dalid Amid Beis.